Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Beard Blather 260. God, we're getting older doing this. This is Saul Montes Bradley, the largest human repository of useless information from Virginia. And right there, right, this guy with a beanie, that would be Thomas Victor, the one and only expert in World War One flamethrowers and all things commonsensical from California. Boy, do we have news from California for you guys. Sorry about the delay. I hope that we do have somebody watching here. And since I don't have a monologue, because I couldn't just write it while I was driving, um, in lieu of a monologue, let me give you my apologies for the tardiness, but what the hell? It's a long road from National Harbor to here. And, which means I just came back from CPAC with quite a bit of news. And the one thing that I wanted to bring up, by the way, the title of this affair, which since I didn't have much time to put it over there, is A Question of Values. Which, as you will see, will tie into CPAC and a lot of other things. But speaking of values, Thomas, before I even start, as I was driving here, I was castigating myself by listening to the BBC. I figure I had to atone for my tardiness. And I heard a lot of things about, poor women in Africa who cannot get a decent nail job, and an idiot who went cave diving in an iceberg and almost didn't make it out, and was lamenting that what she had discovered was already gone, which made me think of all of those rocks of ice floating in my Diet Coke that are no longer there, just as I discovered them. These people are too stupid. And then I heard about Pacific Palisades and your plight in the land of gruesome fruits and flakes came to mind because apparently they have a teeny weeny bit of a problem in the Pacific Palisades after the big fire that consumed everything and their mothers, and then the rains that caused landslides that brought all kinds of toxic material to the ocean. So the beach from Santa Monica all the way to Malibu is closed, with people being told not to enter the ocean because apparently they have no idea what dilution is. And they think that whatever the crap washed into the ocean is still there waiting, like the shark in a horror movie. But then came the clincher. You see, the biggest problem that this official told the BBC interviewer is all the batteries from the electric cars that burned to the ground. Because you see, some of those batteries exploded, boom, and took half a house with them. Others didn't explode, but they're considered dangerous because they could explode any moment now. So they have to go with bomb disposal units to pick up the batteries of your, uh, I don't know, politically correct car and treat it as unexploded ordnance until it can be taken to a place where it can actually be blown up. Isn't it grand to have a Tesla in your driveway?
Well, pretty much everything the people in Pacific Palisades voted for across the board has come back and bitten them all in the ass. And, you know, that doesn't mean they deserve to lose everything they own in their houses and their, family photos and everything. But you have to be aware. You have to be a high information voter. You can't be a low information voter. And we're learning I used to watch this channel, and I've given up on it because it's run by these two young guys who were above, very disdainfully above American politics, even though they're American, because they say there's no difference between the two parties. And it's like, to tell that to Californians. Compare California to the reddest of all red states in terms of what you can and can't do. I did we talk about it on the air? My yeah, we did. We talked about
You see, a party that, with all its failures and with all its cretins, because nothing is homogeneous in this life. You have idiots in all parties. You have mountebanks and rascals in all parties. But one proposes the basic idea of letting you keep as much of your money as possible, leaving you the crap alone, so that you can enjoy the product of your labor and be responsible for your actions. And the other one was to send you back into a nursery where you are very well taken care of, bullshit, in exchange for allowing them to get their hands into your pockets and let you dry and get you dry. No, they're not the same thing.
well,
No.
also
Yep.
no. You just have to look at the political parties. What am I trying to say? You just have to look at the way the country is run when the two different parties are in power. And, nobody can argue that the 4 years of Biden were exactly the same as the 4 years of Trump. I mean, nobody can argue that. And,
Yeah. In a nut house, maybe.
and okay, Pacific Palisades, the okay, I didn't know this. The mayor of Los Angeles has 13 deputy mayors, including one who was suspended for sending bomb threats to people he didn't like. And one of these people was being interviewed, and he was talking about how the houses in Pacific Palisades were not built to code because they were too close together. That's just a lie. That's an absolute lie.
That's bullshit.
Yeah, and I've mentioned my own code problem with the city. What I did was I called the code division and I told them that what they had done by citing me according to a commercial violation and then telling me I had to pay anyway, and then changing that initial section citation to a different one, which was also a commercial. I said that this could be argued in court, that it's a
Harassment.
No, it's an arbitrary and capricious enforcement of the law, which is a violation of my constitutional rights. And they canceled out the citation, and they told me to talk to a man in the city planning department. He told me to talk to the code division. So what's going to happen is I'm going to do some superficial work. The guy who I spoke to, who canceled out the code, he was telling me about all the buildings that have the same issue as mine, and he said, he agreed with me that this was a capricious enforcement of the law and arbitrary. So I was there was no yelling, there was no banging on the desk, there was nothing. I was the friendliest person you could ever imagine, delivering completely massively destructive threats to the city, and I did it very, very in a very friendly tone.
adroitly.
and said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. So, I'm hoping we can just zero this out. That was the phrase I kept using over and over. So it's been zeroed out. I took care of it. Um, it's not done yet, but it'll be done very quickly. And it's okay. This is a hundred. This city is as blue as you could imagine.
Oh yeah.
The congresswoman who represents us is, I mean, she's brainless, and she also doesn't even pretend to care. Um, Whenever it's time for her to be reelected, she comes around and she shakes hands, and she does that thing where she grips your hand and then lets go, and grips your hand.
Like a wet fish.
No, just
You
goes
know.
bump, glump, bump,
Okay.
and in she's always looking a couple people ahead. So when she grips your hand, she's not looking at you. And you know, um,
No,
every
it's the cookie cutter shake.
yeah, and every 2 years she makes promises that she has no intention of keeping, and all of that. And the city has done some incredibly stupid thing. They chased out the two biggest uh, 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 tax, what would you call them, tax providers for the city, income providers for the city. They just moved next door. We have our city, and then the next door city, which is run completely differently. And so the two biggest companies that were paying the highest taxes, they literally just went boop, and they went next door. And the
Which
city,
means your city lost the revenue.
absolutely 100% of it.
Right.
The two owners of the businesses told him, look, you're going to drive us next door. We don't want to go next door. We want to stay here with you. And California has always said that they could do whatever they want because businesses would always come to California. And that's
Right.
true, as the state has discovered.
That is no longer true.
No. And
There have been dozens of thousands of businesses that moved to Texas, Florida, Iowa, Idaho, North Carolina.
well, okay, Joe Rogan was here. Joe Rogan was paid $200 million in his first Spotify contract. Think of the taxes they lost by
Yeah.
chasing him to Texas. Um,
Yeah.
it's
But,
pure,
Joe Rogan would have been a complete imbecile if he didn't go to Texas.
yeah, exactly. And okay, they're starting to gear up for both the next governor and the next presidential candidates for the Democrats. And there's nobody. I mean, there's Gavin Newsom running,
Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
and there's Kamala Harris going to run for governor. And I if she runs, I'm pretty sure she'll win.
And that will only increase the exodus.
Well, just hey, you and I were talking yesterday. I've come to the conclusion that the reason Democrats are so incompetent is because they don't spend any time on their job. They spend all their time figuring out how to steal money, and
Yeah.
it's turned out that they've stolen trillions. And the the way they view it is that there's this gigantic rushing river of money
Yep.
roaring past them, and that they would be idiots not to stick
Not
their
to grab
bucket
it.
in it.
Yeah.
And who cares? There's always more where that came from. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And it turns out that there isn't an endless roaring river of money. There's a limit.
You know about the $2 billion allocated for the $100 NGO created ad hoc by the Australian tank in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
The governor,
Mm-hmm.
she set up a non-profit with $100,
Mm-hmm.
and they allotted her 2 billion.
Mm-hmm.
My God! Not only the raging river, they're not dipping a bucket in the raging river. They are building a dam and redirecting it to the reservoir.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I now, after what Doge has revealed so far, I now have to question everything. And
Yeah.
that means I have to question what the hell's going on with Ukraine. We know that Rand Paul said that we paid for Ukrainian influencers to be on YouTube, and we paid for Ukrainian designers to go to the Paris Fashion Show every year. And
Mm.
you would be an idiot not to question all of this. And you know, there's been a lot of hoopla. The BBC, or no, the Times, the Financial Times, is going crazy. They're saying that Trump is sacrificing Ukraine to Russia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they were claiming that Trump was trying to extort the mineral.
The minerals. He's an imbecile.
Well, what Trump was pointing out is that if we don't have a stake in Ukraine going forward, then why would we guarantee their security? Like what's in it for us? And you always have to think about America first. And if we have a stake in Ukraine, then we will defend Ukraine as ferociously as we would defend Texas, for example.
Yes.
The it's going to work out. And okay, Trump did this before multiple times where, okay, it turns out that the reason Trump is describing Zelensky the way he is because Zelensky has been mouthing off about the United States.
They had a little spat, but
Exactly.
it's already coming back to the river. Last week there were several things I didn't understand. Now I do.
Yeah,
It's a beautiful thing, and
it is.
yeah, it's like Zelensky proposes to pay back whatever loans they get from the U.S. with mineral rights. Biden doesn't even hear that because he's probably taking a nap. Trump comes in and says, "Hey, I'll take you up on that. You can pay us back with the mineral rights." Zelensky, for reasons that I don't know, maybe that day the vodka was polluted.
I know why he did it, because in this peace deal that first was being talked about, there was
Yeah,
no security guarantee for Ukraine. And so he said, if you were going to give you the minerals, it is to pay you back, but also we need a security guarantee. That's why he turned it down.
I was getting there yet,
Okay.
and when Zelensky, but the way Zelensky turns it down was rather mm, uncouth. And
Mhm.
he says, "We're not going to sell our country."
Exactly.
At which moment Trump had a Trumpian fit.
Mhm.
What the fuck do you mean, you asshole? You're a dictator. Your mama is a platypus, and you are Putin's bitch. To which Zelensky answered, "And you live in a bubble of Russian disinformation." In the meantime, Kellogg was in Kiev,
Mhm.
and the U.S. negotiators that Trump sent sat down with Zelensky and discussed, the birds and the bees,
Mhm.
and they came up with an agreement. And by the way, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what the final form is going to be.
No,
I don't know what is going to be proposed to Russia. I
exactly.
fear that Putin is not going to accept the terms, and Trump, who's already sent all the javelins to Russia this past month,
Wait, what?
a shit. This past month, Trump sent a shit ton of javelins to Ukraine.
Right.
Okay? It's gonna turn Ukraine into a freaking missile porcupine,
Hmm.
and that'll be the end of it. But he tried. He's giving Putin the chance to walk away, saving face and claiming victory. Putin is not gonna take it.
Right.
But in the meantime, now Ukraine is accepting the payment with mineral rights,
Hmm.
mm, and even touting that the deal worked out with Kellogg is more than acceptable, and we're very happy with it. Interesting change.
Right.
It,
And
yeah,
okay, before Trump became president, everybody in the West, all the experts, all the political leaders were saying that the war would not end militarily, it would end with a negotiated agreement. When Trump says that, suddenly that's a betrayal of Ukraine.
of
So
course. But not everybody is that stupid. And something even JD Vance said, if your information is coming from the media, you don't know anything about what's going about. I cannot tell you what the agreement is going to be. I cannot tell you what we're going to do. Obviously, he can't because the negotiations are going on. Eh, but what I can tell you is that everything you read is false.
yeah, and okay, the war is currently down to World War One fighting. It's trench warfare. Um, in World War One, they had clumsy, rudimentary tanks. The Russians are using clumsy, rudimentary tanks now. Um, you have completely useless charges by the Russians where every man gets killed. Um, the Koreans, God even knows what the hell they're doing. There's stories that they've been
Dying.
dying. There's stories they've been removed from the battlefield. There's stories that they're surrendering en masse. Blah 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 blah. What's this?
Yeah. This is, after you finished with your train of thought, part of the spat with Ukraine is the amount of aid sent to Ukraine and where did it go.
Mm-hmm.
And I found this from the Center for Strategic and International Studies that's relatively new, and it actually confirms everything that you and I have speculated about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. Uh, there is an introduction, and here we come to the key. Many people ask where the missing 100 billion went, and insist on the statement, "I don't know where all the money is." Comment sections of media reports flamed with accusations of corruptions and malfeasance. Some online commentators speculated about corruption by the CIA. All the bullshit that we had. Well, the short answer is that it is not missing.
Mm-hmm.
The funds went mostly to activities that arose because of the war, and all are accounted for. Some paid for sending equipment and funds directly to Ukraine. A large part went to activities that arose because of the war but were not spent in Ukraine. To see why this is the case, it is important to look at the funding as a whole. Congress appropriated 175 billion as a result of the war, a slight difference with 177 billion that Zelensky cites. This includes all funds in the five supplemental appropriations, 900 billion in the regular budget, but excludes 9 billion in loans. Most has been delivered, and most of the remainder has been obligated through contracts and binding commitments. However, it will take many years for all the contracts to be completed and the money dispersed. In past analysis, these guys have divided aid to Ukraine into categories to illustrate different purposes. Military equipment, replacement of equipment sent to Ukraine from US stockpiles, and foreign military financing of equipment for Ukraine. Items that enhance US military capabilities. And it goes, let me see, I want to get to the money. There we go. So what did Zelensky mean when he said Ukraine had only received 75 billion? It is unclear how he did the math, but here are several plausible explanations. Most likely, he added the value of announced military equipment, 34 billion for a drawdown, 33 billion for USA 1, and 6.3 billion for foreign military sales. That comes to 73 billion, close to what he cited. However, not all the equipment has arrived, so calling it received is not accurate. And on they go, cent by cent. There is no problem here. In the analysis, they mentioned what we did, that much of the military aid is simply, sending them decommissioned stuff, and then the money is actually spent in the US to replace it.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no missing money. There is no trouble. There was a spat, and that is, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, a classic Trump negotiating technique.
Yeah, that's how he always starts. Think back to, okay, and he doesn't start it out of nowhere. The North Koreans said, we're gonna blow the hell out of you, and Trump said, if you keep on jabbering like this, you're going to experience fire and destruction like you've never experienced. And then the North Koreans said, "Oh wait, there's a misunderstanding.
I'm out of here."
Right. And what Trump has been saying is that Zelensky is not aware. Zelensky was not acting as though he really appreciated the effort of the United States, and that Zelensky was saying a lot of insulting things about Trump. So Trump answered in kind, exactly the way he did with Kim Jong-un. And so,
hence J.D. Vance's advice to Zelensky: bad-mouthing Trump in social media is not a good negotiating technique.
Well, especially not in social media. Trump has been on social media far longer than Zelensky has. So, Trump has his own platform, for God's sake. But, okay. The Europeans have not covered themselves with glory in regard to this war. The German, what? Okay, as you pointed out, I mentioned that the Germans were buying Russian oil and gas up until December of last year, and you pointed out the Ukrainians allowed it because these pipelines go through Ukraine.
Yeah, and of course they're also buying liquefied natural gas. The Germans are buying Russian gas today. They're still buying Russian gas.
Okay.
And so is Spain. Spain, in the 3 years, by the way, tomorrow is going to be 3 years since the invasion. That was going to last a week. In the 3 years since the war started, Spain alone has paid Russia over 9.5 billion for natural gas purchases.
Mm-hmm.
Germany, 4 times as much. Now, these are the countries that used to pressure Ukraine, Remember, because Ukraine refused to sit up front. For a couple of years, we cannot reduce our purchases. And the Germans jumped all over Ukraine, and Orban is a puppet of Putin. And the Germans were buying gas, and the Ukrainians were transporting it.
Well, see, basically what Trump is saying is he's saying if you people aren't acting as if this war is as important as you say it is, then we're going to put pressure on everybody to end it
Yeah,
quickly as possible. And he does have a point that
it is.
you know the killing and the destruction is, you know, it's unbelievable. Especially in this you know, in the 21st century in Europe. And all of European NATO could crush the Russians in a week without the US taking part.
Yeah.
And what we need to do is we need to end this war however ways. Okay, as you said, Putin won't accept the deal. So what the Ukrainians need to do is they need to continue destroying the Russian oil infrastructure.
Yeah.
They need to take more land. They've been pushing the Russians back in Ukraine proper, and the Europeans need to start delivering them as many modern fighter jets with.
I'll go a step further. The
What's that?
Europeans. I'll go one step further. The Europeans need to provide Ukraine with the air force.
Yeah. That's what I was.
Send a few squadrons. Never mind sending them planes for them to train. Fuck that. We're past that point. At
Well,
this
that's
point, you send your planes.
what I was going to say was that you take the Swedish and Finnish and Danish and German and Norwegian and
Yeah.
pilots, and you use them as contractors, as private military contractors, for example, and you paint the jets over with the Ukrainian markings.
Livery. Yeah.
Exactly. And okay, what Trump is doing right now is pretty staggering. The Europeans need to do something as staggering in order to end this war
Yeah.
in a way that benefits Ukraine. Just letting it grind on the way it is not. It's not, as they've said themselves, it's not going to end militarily. It could go on for
Yeah.
another 10 years.
And,
So-
and you and I have been saying for the longest time, indeed, that neither side can win. But it is in our interest and in Europe's interest to not allow Putin a victory.
Exactly.
We need to go in there and defend Ukraine and expel the Russians from Ukraine. And that's it.
Yeah.
There are no other options.
No.
If we allow Putin to claim victory and have a victory parade in Moscow, I saw some press report the other day that Trump was going to go to Moscow for the celebrations of the V-Day for World War II, that Putin was going to turn into a victory celebration in Ukraine. I don't think Trump is going to do that. I'm sorry.
Did he ever do that before in his first term?
Of course not. Not even close. He might do it, by the way, if there is a deal that Russia withdraws from Ukraine and all that jazz. I'll give you my presents. You can pretend to celebrate. But I don't think so. The point is that if Putin was allowed to stop the war now, rebuild his economy, rebuild his stocks, claim victory so that the morons dunked in vodka that he has for citizens don't kill him on the streets. In 2 years, he's invading somebody else. And since he already proved that NATO will wink, it may be Latvia. But
Well,
he's
this
going to do it again.
the Russian position has always been that the Europeans will not fight for another European country. They will allow Russia to take over that country. And the Europeans have not, as I said before, they've not shown themselves to have any sort of spine when it comes to this.
No.
They always harken back to, well, we're the only people in the history of the human race who know about war. It's like, no, you're the only people in the history of the human race who know about starting world wars. You started two of them, but that's neither here nor there. 2025 has nothing to do with 1945, and
Yeah.
we're not going to look to you for any kind of wisdom when it comes to wars.
Yeah, we're the only ones who know about war. Tell it to Attila, Genghis Khan, and Xerxes, you imbecile.
Well,
Eh, or the Japanese.
tell it to everybody else.
Yeah, tell it to the Japanese. They don't.
Yeah.
I've never been in war.
No, and the Japanese, to their credit, don't go around saying we can't defend ourselves because we're the only people who know about war. The Japanese in 2018, they what do you call it? They brought about their Marine Corps again. The Japanese had abolished the Marine Corps after World War II, and in 2018 they reestablished the Marine Corps, and they're so good now that they're training Americans.
And in 2018 they started their Marine Corps again. The Marine Corps again. When who was president exactly in the U.S.? Because it was Trump's agreement with Japan that brought back their Marines. It was the U.S. imposition in 45, the reason why they didn't have Marines or an offensive capacity of any kind. And it was with Trump that they reviewed that and started being more active, more proactive,
Mhm.
to literally be a partner of the U.S. in the policing, if I may be so bold, the Pacific.
Mhm.
So it was under Trump that Japan abandoned its neutrality and changed its constitution so that it could have a force. And now they have a navy.
They have a Navy, and they did something really brilliant. They created something that they call a helicopter destroyer. It's an aircraft carrier.
Yes.
They're not allowed to have aircraft carriers. They have aircraft carriers, and we sold them the naval version of the F-35. So they have a blue water navy. They have aircraft carriers.
And by the way, they build their carriers at a cost of $1 billion each.
Mhm.
That is probably the galley for one of ours.
Oh yeah.
Mhm. And Gonzalo says here, and he's right, those helicopter destroyers, they can land and take off F-35s from them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something the Chinese don't have.
No, I mean the Chinese copied crappy Russian aircraft carriers, and the Chinese aircraft, the naval fighters on the Chinese aircraft carriers can't carry weapons.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing.
They'll go off that ski jump at the end of the yeah. It's the Chinese are ridiculous. The Japanese are not.
Hey, have you noticed, by the way, that China is kind of silent lately?
Oh yeah, yeah. They're watching Trump with horror. They're thinking, if he's going to do that to his own country, what's he going to do to us?
Ooh.
Machetes.
Which brings me to the concept of values again. You recall how we started talking about values yesterday. One of the meetings that I attended these past 3 days, because CPAC is CPAC, but there are a lot of meetings around CPAC that are far more interesting. And I was in one of those. By the way, there says that Trump is going to use chainsaws on China. Eh, that's funny. I'm sorry. So there are these meetings around. I was in one of those meetings with a bunch of European legislators, members of the European Parliament, prime ministers. There were five of them. I can't say the names publicly, though I mentioned it to you because it's an off the record thing. So I cannot quote him literally, and I cannot publicly say who was there, who wasn't. But a pattern began to arise. Number one, not two of them had the same opinion. All of them were affected by J.D. Vance's speech at the security conference in Munich. Remember the speech?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I hope our audience does too, because I don't want to repeat everything, but it's the one where he essentially exhorts Europe to stop fooling around with censorship and wokeism, and that's where I think he makes a mistake, and go back to our common values. And I say go back to our common values. I don't know because Europe does not know what it is to live without censorship, government oppression,
Also,
and
Europeans are insulted if we tell them we have common values with them. You know,
mm,
they don't want to have common values with the ugly United States.
of course we don't, but they don't have common values among themselves.
No, that's the
There,
thing.
there, there are no European values is an intellect.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. There are Austrian values, Italian values, a whole lot of different British values. I see that Ayo joined here because different parts of the United Kingdom they have different values altogether, and sometimes they look at each other like, look at that barbarian. Uh, Europe is not a nation. It's not a tribe. There are no common interests in Europe.
Well, you know what Europeans don't have that we have is patriotism. Europeans are not patriotic. They can sometimes be nationalistic, but it's a different nationalism than the nationalism that Trump espouses. European nationalism is all about conquering others and imposing basically forcing other countries to become vassal states to your own. That's their European nationalism is we're the greatest in the world, so therefore we deserve to take what we want from you. And American nationalism is we'll help you, but it has to be in our self-interest, and um, we have to consider our own situation first. And Americans are also patriotic, which Europeans don't understand American patriotism.
Very few. Number one, we don't even have a common language.
No.
Mm. When the French talk about equality, they're not talking about equality before the law. They're talking about egalitarianism. Everybody poor. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Now nobody can be envious of his neighbor.
Yeah, and fraternity in France, for the French
Yeah,
are fraternal. Come on.
eh, not even between the regions.
Yeah.
Eh, but the thing is, equality has a different meaning. Liberty has a different meaning. Nationalism, in and of itself, is a word that means love of one's nation, country, tribe, call it what you will. There's nothing wrong with that. But in the late 1800s, a group of assholes in Bohemia came up with this political ideology of nationalism that essentially becomes the worship of the nation state or the totemic state. That is what Hitler combined with socialism and with other consequences.
Well, also
In
European
America, it's not the totemic state.
the European nationalism always is melded with militarism, and American
Yes,
American nationalism is anti-militaristic.
it's
American,
isolationist.
exactly, and Americans are even after every war we fight, we unilaterally disarm every single time. It's like after a party or an orgy, you just feel so sick about what you've done that you throw out all your clothes and you get rid of
Well,
everything.
depends on who you're having the orgy with, you know.
Yeah. And so after every war, we unilaterally disarm, and then we have to build up again. And in the case of the Europeans, the only reason they disarmed was because we forced them to.
Yeah.
We didn't. After World War One, we decided that was a war to end all wars, and the League of Nations was created, and it was just as
Dismal.
impotent as the United Nations. When the Japanese were called to the carpet for what they were doing in China, they said, "Fine, we're dropping out of the League of Nations," and the League of Nations had nothing;
Collapsed.
it couldn't do anything. Um, we a mistake was made after the end of World War One in that you know Germany basically we set the seed for Nazism in Germany by the Versailles Treaty. People don't talk about it, that Austria-Hungary broke up into Austria and Hungary, and Bulgaria were also under the same sorts of terms that the Germans were. The Turks said, "Screw you, we're not accepting it," under Ataturk. And basically they went to war again. And the Ataturk raised the Turkish National Army. And so we said, okay, we'll give you a different treaty from all the others. And so Turkey got their own treaty. But
Yeah.
and that's why Turkey hasn't really caused any trouble. It's caused a bit of trouble under I forgot his name. What the hell's his name? Who's running Turkey right now? The president.
Oh, Erdogan.
Erdogan. Yeah.
Yeah, up to a point.
Yeah.
Up to a point, because Erdogan is more controversial than effective. He has a big mouth, but he has not pulled Turkey out of NATO. He
No.
has not turned on the West. He is fiercely protecting the disarmament or the demilitarization of the Bosphorus, and he doesn't want Russia in Crimea. So even Erdogan didn't go that far.
Well, and he's certainly, after seeing what Israel has been able to pull off, he's not going to pick a fight with Israel any day now.
He's gonna talk like crazy, and he's gonna have a trade agreement the moment the wind stops blowing.
Uh,
Now, the thing with Europe, Ayo makes a good point there. The European nations are not that old at all. In fact, most of them are younger than the U.S.
oh yeah, Germany, for example.
Germany didn't exist even in World War One. It was Prussia, not Germany, and it was the largest part of the territory is what is now northern Poland,
Mhm.
all the way to Kaliningrad. Königsberg. I- Italy exists since 1870.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the UK, as such, was established in 1817, I believe, if my memory doesn't fail me. So, all of these newcomers to the nation state, all of them who went out to copy the American Constitution but poorly, because they didn't quite freaking understand it. France, as we know it today, is a product of the mid 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
Their famous French Revolution uh, came in a generation after our War of Independence.
And it was a bloodbath. It was a nightmare.
Yeah, because there was a counter revolution, by the way, because it was started by Thomas Paine and the Marquis de Lafayette. I mean, all of the veterans, older veterans of the American Revolution. And then there was a counter revolution, and it ended up in the Reign of Terror. It was a fucking bloodbath. And it was so freaking bad that it ended up in the restoration of the monarchy.
Mm-hmm.
Because the people begged for a king to come back and finish this dark period in our history. And the republic as we know it today has nothing to do with the French Revolution. And it's we're 150 years old. I mean, come on, give me a break.
The French are so arrogant that they decided that they were going to create a whole different system of measuring time. It was going to be based on the decimal system. So there were going to be every day was going to have 10 hours of daylight and 10 hours of nighttime. There are going to be 10 months out of the year, 10 days of the week. It was a catastrophe. They made clocks. You can still find antique clocks that were they're set to decimal time, and every day of the year had a different name. And so, since there were 500 days out of the year or something, they ran out of names. So one name was Mud. Another day was, Cow Hoof. I mean, they just, it was a catastrophe, and they couldn't make it work because it's not based on anything. Our current calendar is basically based on the how often the world turns per year.
Yep.
Thing. And the French decided that doesn't matter. We're going to make up we're going to make up something that's totally easy, the decimal time system. And it was a catastrophe. Only the French would be arrogant enough to think.
Arrogant enough to try that one. 18 Brumaire. Oh, blow my. The argument can't be made since is right that the current France started with de Gaulle, which is true because he kind of like relaunched the republic. But actually, it was still France before de Gaulle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different regime, but still France. But before that, it wasn't France. And not too long ago, most of France was part of the Kingdom of Navarre, or England, or Germany, or Austria. So, they can blow me with the old Europe. There are old things in Europe, but then again, we have pyramids in America, which are much older. I don't give a shit.
Well, and a hell of a lot of the old things were rebuilt after World War II because they were leveled, like entire cities were leveled.
There wasn't in the whole city of Frankfurt. There was one house left.
Yeah,
one. When you go to Munich and you say, "Oh, look at the dome! Oh, what architecture!" It was built by Turks in the 1950s. Because you look at the photos of the place in 1945, and it looks worse than Gaza.
Yeah. No, Berlin in 1945. I mean, the newsreel footage. I mean, they had heavy artillery, the heaviest of all heavy artillery, firing point blank into buildings, and the shell would go through
Yeah,
like houses in a row.
it was a pile of rubble. It looked like Gaza City. And so everything is nowhere than they tell you it is. Of course, there is the occasional old town that remain more or less intact, but the big cities now. It, but the thing too is the point that I was trying to make. There are no common values in Europe because there is no common culture.
Well, speaking of common values in Gaza, the Palestinians did something yesterday that was just as brainless as filming the October 7th attack. They had a mock, they had a ceremony where they brought out the corpses of an infant and a 4-year-old, and a woman they said was their mother, but turned out to be an anonymous Palestinian. And they had a
Yeah.
ceremony where they mocked all of them, and the Palestinians were cheering. And this has had an impact on Israel that the Palestinians could not possibly have anticipated. And now Trump's plan of evacuating all of the Palestinians from
It's
Gaza,
on, baby.
it's on. The
It's on.
Israelis are saying they're for it. Marco Rubio says he's for it.
No,
Uh,
no, no. Listen, you know how much I appreciate the so-called Palestinians. Um, what they did with these Vivas kids, and I haven't commented publicly on it until now because I was so fucking furious that I knew if I wrote what I was thinking, I would be banned from social media again. Period. End of story. No question about it. I'm gonna try to put some humor on it because it is the only way I can talk about this without blowing a fuse. You and I have spoken many times about that fucking moron from California, Treadwell.
mhm.
A kind of hippoid. Uh, I don't know if he was from California or Portland, Oregon, or some other hippie place.
Somewhere from the West Coast.
Yeah, who was who had a special relationship with grizzly bears in Alaska. And he made several trips to live with the bears. Now, you say he was a biologist. No. He was a veterinarian. He was an animal expert. No. He was just a fucking moron who liked the bears.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to go to Alaska and camp with the bears for the summer and come back and started doing YouTube videos and all that jazz. So he would record himself. And in his last trip, he took a poor stupid girl who apparently fell for that imbecile, and they went to live with the bears. And in the videos, he's always, "Oh, here comes Johnny. Johnny, what are you doing, Johnny? Andrew." He had names for the fucking bears. He spoke with the bears. And the last thing that you hear in the video is, "No, Johnny, why are you doing this?" Which is at the precise moment when Johnny is eating him.
Well,
And both him and the girl were eaten. When you live next to savage animals, that is what's going to happen to you.
Treadwell went to live among the bears because he was a drug addict at the time. And
Yeah.
he credited the bears with getting him off drugs. I mean, never mind the fact that he was in the deepest part of inaccessible Alaska where he couldn't get drugs. He said that
There was no dealer nearby.
the bears saved him. And okay,
But let me finish the thing because the man whose cadaver was returned together with the kids, was a liberal Jew who thought that we all have to sing kumbaya and live in harmony. And he wanted to establish relations with the Palestinians to show that we're all one people. And he moved to a house as close as possible to the border with Gaza. And he volunteered and took Gazan kids to hospitals and brought them food and tried to make their lives better because we are all of one family until the bear ate him.
Well, we were talking last night. There was a young Palestinian woman in Gaza, and her propane tank blew up, and she was terribly burned. So the Israelis brought her to their biggest burn center, and they fixed her as much as they could. And by the time they were finished, you could barely tell that this person had basically been, suffered third-degree burns on 80% of her body. So she went back to Gaza, and a few years later, she came back with a suicide vest in order to kill the doctor who saved her. And they stopped her, and she had a tantrum. They have a, I don't know if they, okay, I guess they're not, I don't even know. They had a safe space between Gaza and Israel with no human beings, where they would let people in, and they would film them, and they would give them orders through a loudspeaker. And so they made her take off her suicide vest, and she had a tantrum. Then they arrested her, and she had no qualms whatsoever. She was very grateful to the doctor for saving her, and she wanted to kill him. Now, these can't properly. Okay, who was the former prime minister just recently before Netanyahu?
Yehud Barak?
No,
or more recently. Oh, the imbecile from the white and blue. Um, oh,
Laftani, something Laftani. At any rate, I saw
Naftali Bennett.
That's it, Naftali Bennett. Okay, he said, I saw him being interviewed, and he said that this was a multifaceted blow, a self-own by the Palestinians. Number one, they murdered all of those people, and the Israeli government has not given details yet, but they said they were not shot. They were murdered with the
babies. The babies were strangled,
and then right,
and once that now imagine strangling a 10-month-old baby.
Well, most people don't understand because they watch movies. To strangle somebody takes about 10 to 15 minutes.
And the 4-year-old.
And the 4-year-old.
Strangled.
For 10 or 15 minutes.
And once they were dead, by hand. No cords, no piano wire, no rope. By hand. And once they were there, they pelted them with stones and otherwise mutilated their bodies to simulate death by debris.
Right.
If I were younger, I'd be already there. All I want to do is bring the judgment of God on their heads.
Well, it's coming. And what Naftali Bennett was saying is that the fact that the Palestinians murdered these three, and then the fact that they had this quasi-satanic ritual with their coffins, and I haven't heard anybody else mention this, but the pallbearers of the coffins each belonged to a different Palestinian terrorist group. You could tell by their
Yes.
heads.
Yes.
There was,
And tribe.
there was there was the Hamas terrorists. There was the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. There was Fatah, and there was the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. And it's their headbands. Hamas is green. Palestinian Islamic Jihad is black and yellow. Fatah is yellow and black, and the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine is red. So they're all in this together.
Yes.
And
when you see the 80 years old celebrating in that parade, you know that you can't let anybody out of there.
This is what Naftali Bennett was saying, that Israelis have finally realized that it's the whole population. And, you know, they can't be saved.
How long have I been saying there are no innocents there? Everybody's a part of it. This woman and her babies were not kidnapped by Hamas soldiers, so to speak. They were kidnapped by civilians who joined in the party.
Yeah, I've seen the video of the kidnapping.
The monster who strangled the babies was not a soldier, was a civilian.
Well, okay, there are no soldiers in.
There are no civilians either. There are only irregular combatants.
Yeah, and they've brought all this destruction down on their own heads, and in response, they haven't learned anything. They murdered these 3 people. They tried. They put bombs on Israeli public transportation, and the plan was that dozens and dozens and dozens of bombs would all go off simultaneously. And yes. Luckily, 3 of the bombs went off prematurely while the buses were in their depots. So
they wanted to create a distraction immediately after the delivery of the corpses, and the distraction was buses blowing up all over the place. Like you said, 3 of them blew up in the depot, and that gave the Israelis the opportunity to stop the thing before they had 100 deaths in their hands. And they're doing this during the ceasefire.
Yeah, and
you know,
they have no sense of what's the word? They have no sense of.
They have no humanity.
Well, they have no sense of self-protection, and what they're like a paranoid, a suicidal paranoid schizophrenic who can't be treated, and all you have to keep all knives away from them, and you have to keep them in a padded cell for the rest of their lives. Like they can't.
Yeah.
As you've pointed out, there have been Islamic jihadist terrorist attacks in Europe on a daily basis for the past what?
And in America on a weekly basis, but the press is not reporting it.
Okay, this last time, it was a Syrian refugee in France.
Yes.
This guy seriously wounded multiple police officers. And my question was, why the hell didn't they shoot him dead? A civilian died trying to intervene.
Yes.
That guy's still alive.
Yes.
Why is he still alive?
And the police don't shoot, because if the police shoot, then they sue the police.
Yeah. Well, then France.
Remember the guy in Spain that drove a van and killed 13 people in the Ramblas in Barcelona?
Yeah.
He was cornered 3 days later.
Mm-hmm.
And when the police approached, he started shooting at the police. So the police shot back. There's such lousy fucking shots that these lasted several hours and thousands of rounds until finally they struck the terrorist. The policeman who was lucky enough to end this circus spent the next 3 years in the courts accused of homicide.
Well, it was homicide. I mean,
Yeah, but you would say it was justified since
justifiable.
we're talking about a terrorist who was shooting at you.
Yeah, it was justifiable homicide, and
That's not what the law says over there. He's tried for murder.
see if all of this is the case, then the Europeans are bringing all this down on their own heads, and
Yes,
there's
it's what Gadsad calls suicidal empathy.
yeah, and there's no need for Americans to feel bad about this because this is madness. This is complete madness. This is
It's yes, but then again, we always knew that the woke cretins are essentially mad,
well,
and they are, and there were two in Germany because yesterday was in France, 2 days ago it was in Berlin. In the
Austria.
past 2 weeks, in the past 2 weeks, we've had another three in Germany, one in Austria.
Hmm.
It's like give me a break. And we always said when people were celebrating the demise of ISIS, we always said these guys are moving to Europe and America, and they're going to be carrying out the call for global jihad, and they're going to be attacking with knives, with cars, with trucks, with hatchets, or whatever they can find on an almost daily basis. And that's what they're doing. Surprise. They told you in writing beforehand exactly what the plan was.
Well, you mentioned that you wanted to bring down hell on Gaza. That's
Yeah,
that's a direct quote from the Israelis saying that it's going to happen. That
well, he
that
has to.
it's going to, because obviously, I mean, Hamas can't be left in power, and the only way to make sure that Hamas isn't left in power is to kill them all.
He's killed them all. Did you hear the Grand Mufti of Saudi and the Grand Mufti of the Emirates?
No.
What these people have done is an affront to all of Islam
Yeah.
and blasphemy. You know what that means?
Well,
That's a green light for Israel, the US, or anybody else. It's open season on assholes.
yeah. No, no, it's interesting because keep in mind that not even the Islamic State were called blasphemous.
Because theoretically there is no such thing. But they run out of arguments.
That's the thing. The Palestinians are forging new ground in
Yes.
the Middle East with their depravity, and you know they've convinced the Israelis. Okay, these people have to go. It wasn't enough to
Yeah.
defeat their terrorist forces. Now we're going to have to get rid of them. We're going to have to send them
Yeah.
away, and you know, um, and I have absolutely no doubt. Let's say they go to live somewhere else. I won't say where, just theoretically. And Gaza is rebuilt and it's the pearl of whatever. And then they throw open the door to all the former residents. They say, come back in. They would demolish it in a matter of weeks.
They would rip the plumbing from the buildings to make rocket launchers.
Yep.
No, there is no solution. Now, if you don't want to kill him, okay, build a nice tent city in fucking Antarctica and send him over there to get a big fights with penguins. Just keep him someplace where they cannot get out. I think it's a hell of a lot easier to send them to their maker and goodbye. I don't think they're entitled to life. I don't think they're entitled to breathe.
Well, Naftali Bennett was talking about how reasonable Fatah was, and here's the Fatah pallbearers in Gaza.
I would say Fatah, right? I always told you, you cannot, change Hamastan for Fatastan.
Yeah.
When the last of the Hamas holes is gone from Gaza, you start clearing the Fatah holes.
Well, they're doing that. They're just it's not being reported by the press for some reason, but they're carrying out operations in the West Bank.
In Ramallah, in Jenin, very limited so far, but still, it's a different thing. There cannot be a Palestinian Authority. There cannot be a Palestinian police. You cannot give these people weapons for any reason. And half of them, you cannot allow them to live within 5,000 miles of Israel. There can no longer be any peaceful argument because they are incapable of living with anybody.
They're all going to end up in Europe.
I would say send them to Saint Denis sur Seine. Who's going to notice the difference? But no, like fuck it. Don't send them anybody. Put them all in a boat and sink it in the middle of the ocean. I've never you and I have been talking for 7 years now. Have I ever expressed a desire to see 2 million people sunk in the middle of the ocean?
No.
That's how I feel now.
Well, see, the Palestinians have done everything in their power to make rational people want them gone. That they are the most. The Palestinian culture is the most depraved culture on earth. It's like they're worse than the Russians, and
yeah,
they're like you know what they're like? It's an entire geographical area that is populated entirely by the Derlevanger Brigade.
Yes. Yeah, but even the Derlevanger Brigade wouldn't go to the lengths these assholes to go. And even the psychotic sons of bitches of the Derlevanger Brigade were incapable of committing some of these crimes.
The Derlevanger Brigade were recruited. They were professional criminals and mental patients. The Palestinians don't have that excuse. The Palestinians are choosing to be the way they are, and people say, oh, well, they're brainwashed
by themselves. They teach their kids this shit.
Well, and also brainwashing is not as, you have to be a certain type of person to be brainwashed. Hard leftists are not wonderful people who just happen to be hard leftists. If you're a hard leftist, it's a spectrum disorder. You've got a whole bunch of other things wrong with you. So it's not that these are well-meaning, wonderful, gentle people who were just misled. And it's the same with the Palestinians. They're not great people.
They're savage animals.
Yeah.
They're not people in any sense of the word. They're not human. in any sense of the word. Because, uh, there are a shit ton of apes out there that look very much like us, and they're not human. Neither are these guys.
Chimps have 98% of the
Yes,
genes that we do.
yes, and eat their babies.
Well, that's the thing, that
Because they're chimps, they're not human.
when you're missing that 2%, it makes a fuck of a difference. A chimp will never be able to fly an airliner. You could teach that chimp for a decade. A chimp will never be able to fly an airliner, and it's because it's missing that final 2%. And the Palestinians are they're missing something.
Yeah, 5%. 5%. They're as savage as the chimps without the possibility of being trainable. I've lost any hope that there can be a connection with these people.
No, I mean, they're going to have to be moved out, and one by one, countries are they're understanding. Because see, nobody wants to. Okay, nobody wants to stand up for the Palestinians. No institution wants to stand up for them. The BBC, I don't know if you heard this, they put out a documentary narrated by a Palestinian boy, and
They had to apologize. Yeah,
turns out that he's the son of a Hamas member, and so it's
a Hamas minister.
it's a huge scandal in the UK now, and so no institution wants to be caught dead sympathizing with the Palestinians anymore, because they've crapped in their nest so often. And it's the same thing in this country. The Democrats are now arguing in favor of government corruption and arguing in favor of thievery, and
is an instinct of self-preservation in the case of the Democrats. But it's like, before we change subjects, how can you keep 250 hostages in a place as small as Rafah or Gaza City without the collaboration of every single fucking citizen there?
well, there were hostages who escaped, and they were rounded up by civilians and turned
Yeah.
back to Hamas.
Everybody helped. Everybody pitched in.
Yeah.
And now that they paraded the corpses of the strangled babies, they were celebrating on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're not human. Bomb the living fuck out of every corner of that godforsaken
they're
place.
idiots. They don't understand. They don't understand what they've done, and they don't understand what's coming.
Sodom and Gomorrah was nothing compared to what we need to do here. There shouldn't be the memory of these fuckers. And if you have any living in some other country, send them back in there so they can join their relatives in oblivion. I remember a doctor I had to request that the hospital removed from my father's care. A cardiologist.
Mm-hmm.
Palestinian. I started talking with him with some, looking for, how can I say, a rapprochement. And I was being very nice to him. And, oh, well, what about this? What about that? And I made him so comfortable that he felt like opening up.
Yeah, the The comedian Norm Macdonald said, "Don't you love that moment when somebody feels so comfortable with you? They go, 'There's something I'd like to share with you.' They take off the mask."
I said, uh-huh. The moment he left, I called the administration. I want this son of a bitch out of my father's room. Because if my mother comes to visit, he's still gonna try to kill her. How can we have that kind of shit in our hospitals?
Well, did you see the two nurses claiming that they'd actually murdered Jewish patients?
Yes, I have no doubt they did. And I have no doubt that this fucker that I met would do it if given the chance, and probably did too. He wasn't bragging about that, but a Palestinian from Gaza, by the way, cardiologist. He's a cardiologist because we took him out of Gaza. We put him in a school and paid the bills. We made him into a cardiologist. He's working in a hospital in a city that's 70% Jews. In Southeast Florida, where there are a shit ton of Jews. Why?
Well, is it a blue part of Florida?
There's less and less blue in Florida as time goes by. Yes, of course.
Yeah, doing that, having a Palestinian cardiologist makes them feel all warm and comfy and proud.
Yeah, shit on a virtue signal and no brains.
Yeah.
So anyway, I wanted to say that before we left Palestine. Nothing. Destroy the fucking place. They want from the river to the sea. Fucking give it to them.
Well, they say they love death. So what's the problem?
Yeah, they love death. Give it to them. They want a whole country from the river to the sea. So shall it be.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the West Bank anymore. It's Judea and Samaria, and go fuck yourselves. I in through many years in my life, I listened and tried to understand and refused to not consider the possibility of an autonomous entity. Not anymore. No, go. That's it. I came to the conclusion a long time ago that the two-state solution was bullshit, and that was when Arafat rejected the last offer. I think it was from Netanyahu, or was it from Sharon? Well, it was several years ago, 2005 or thereabouts. It must have been Netanyahu. It offered everything they ever asked for, except for East Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
And they said no.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I said, these people are not serious.
No. Okay. The leaders understand that the billions would stop pouring in. And, all of them, I mean, what was his name? Ismail Hania. He had like a 4th grade education. He was like he was just some goober. And because of all the money pouring in, he ended up a billionaire. So, Arafat was worth at least $3 billion.
At least 3. His daughter, who only got part of his fortune because the other part went to her mother, lives in Paris. Her fortune is 15 billion.
15 billion?
Yep. And of course, there is the mother. who got another chunk. 5 billion was Haniyeh, who was nothing next to Arafat. Arafat, the Cairo-born Egyptian, Palestinian my ass.
Yeah.
There is no. I'm really at this point. Like I said, I had understood that there could not be a one state, a two-state solution. I then thought, maybe we have to force Egypt to take Gaza back and Jordan to take the West Bank back. Not anymore. Drop a fucking neutron bomb in the West Bank. First, you tell some, not all, of the Christian priests of various denominations that guard the holy sites to get the fuck out of Dodge for 48 hours. Then you drop a neutron bomb. You protect the property and kill every motherfucker in there because there's no rescue in this thing. There is no training this dog.
Well, people are idiots. I watched this channel by some guy who is the resident expert in this, that, and the other, and he was commenting on the video by I forgot the name of the terrorist group. It ended with Al-Zenki, and they beheaded what this guy said was a Palestinian child, and it was in reality a Syrian soldier who was 19. And when that happened, which was around 2015, 2013, something like that, I found all the pictures of him wearing his uniform, holding a machine gun, smoking cigarettes. And what nobody commented about was that this so-called Palestinian child had his right leg in a splint. And what had happened was that this terrorist group basically bought him from a Syrian military hospital. They paid the military.
They bought the corpse.
They bought him when he was alive. They turned him over, and he was beheaded wearing a splint on his leg. And you could see from the tubing and everything that it was a like a frontline hospital. It wasn't a top line hospital. And I debated whether I should say something or not. And then I noticed in the comment section, some guy said, in reality, this is a 19-year-old Syrian soldier. And there were like 400 responses. 100% of them, fuck you, you don't know anything. Why? I hate people who say shit like that. That was a child. He wasn't no 19-year-old. So, yeah, it was 10 years ago when it happened, but it wasn't 500 years ago.
Yeah.
And the propaganda, okay, the Iranians, basically what the Iranians did, this was a Syrian hospital. The Iranians controlled the Syrians. They needed an atrocity so they could point to the terrorists.
Right.
So they had the Syrians deliver this 19-year-old soldier who he had a medical condition that made him look like a 12-year-old child. But you could hear in the videos, there were multiple videos made of that atrocity, and he had a man's voice. He was not a 12-year-old boy. He was a Syrian man. And
the terrorist group was Nur al-Din al-Zenki.
Exactly. And
Nur al-Din.
That particular terrorist group was exterminated by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham in one day. And they were the last ones. The Al-Zenki was under the protection of the Turks, and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham lured the Turks. It was called the Syrian National Front, the Syrian Freedom Liberation Front. That's what it was. The Syrian Liberation Front. HTS lured them deep inside their territory, and then they launched 21 simultaneous offensives. And the last one, they wiped out Al-Zenki to the last man, and that was a good thing. All the men in that video were identified as dead men, as corpses, and they looked a lot better dead than they did alive. But
Yep. And so did the world.
so did what? The world looked better.
So did the world. The world looked better with those assholes dead.
True, but see, all it
As
took.
as it's gonna look better when Putin drops. It, I didn't think I was gonna see this again in my life. I was listening to a woman from Mariupol. Her mother and father were arrested by the FSB. 4 months later, her mother was dropped in a hospital in a coma. Her father is never been seen again. And it turns out that there are about 20,000 people who were neither killed, nor wounded, nor captured, nor taken to the hinterland, disappeared. Ukrainians who protest the Russian occupation in their towns have a tendency to just disappear.
Have you heard of a?
I don't see the American press talking about this.
Have you heard of a movie called Eastern Dreams?
No.
It's a David Cronenberg movie about the Russian mafia in London, and I'll spoil it for people if they want to watch it. I don't recommend it. It's not a good movie, and it's got a lot of gore. But if you want to see Viggo Mortensen having a nude knife fighting scene, then
pass.
But Viggo Mortensen, he's playing a Russian mafioso, and the twist in the movie is that he's actually a member of the Russian FSB working with the British MI6 to eradicate the Russian mafia. Poor David Cronenberg, he's so innocent.
Yes, yes. You know, I just realized that we were doing this on YouTube too. And probably they're going to hit us with a suspension after this. So if you're watching this in YouTube, don't worry if we just take this off the air. Uh, and fuck anybody who does not let me vent on this issue. I'm sick and tired of the structure that attacks speech and defends terrorists. Damn them.
I took all my videos off the air. I privated all of them and eventually deleted a lot of them just because, why bother? YouTube is as
I told you we can bring them over to our Odyssey channel.
Well, most of what I wrote about the Middle East and everything is all obsolete by now, and it's pretty fascinating. The Middle East has changed so much from what was happening, back in the day when I was writing about it.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, tell us about this. I'll leave you alone for 1 second, because as you know, I drove for 4 hours after a day at meetings, and there is something I need to do.
Okay.
Be right back.
Yeah, no, the Middle East has changed as radically as Trump is trying to change the United States. And well, this new light makes me look, or maybe it's just my eyes. I don't know. Maybe it's my computer. I look all fuzzy. I look like I've got a diffuser on. Anyway, the Middle East has changed so radically. The change was slow over 10 years or so, but it was thorough. It was radical. Like nobody is really speaking out. The Jordanians said you cannot move the Palestinians out of Gaza. Then they said, we'll take some. And allegedly the Egyptians are moving troops and tanks to the border. Why? You're obviously not going to fight the Israelis. Are you going to fight Hamas? They'll come out with their little rifles, their little rusted AKs. I don't know. I don't follow the Middle East as closely as I used to. I don't follow. I guess I'm a different person now, and I get tired. I'm very intolerant of futility, like Putin. Putin is an extremely futile man. What he's doing in Ukraine is utterly futile. The Europe, every European nation state is an exercise in futility. You can't protect yourself and have a social safety net. Well, a welfare society, let's call it what it is. You can't do that. Your country falls apart, as European countries are. 10 years ago, the EU and the US were on parity economically, and now the EU is around 60% of what it was 10 years ago, because they said, hey, we're going to adopt green energy, and we're going to shut down all our farms. So they have no food and they have no energy, and they're no longer industrialized. Madness and futility. And what the Democrats were doing in this country is extremely futile. And I keep hearing people complaining about how they support what Trump is doing, but they don't like the way he's doing it. And it's like, there's only one way to do it, which is the way that Trump is doing it. You have to go in and you have to be very loud and if necessary rude, and you have to knock people out of the way. I just saw a video tonight. It showed all these men standing on this path, just talking, a group of men, and here comes a llama walking up the path. And the llama goes up, and it goes up to the men, and it rears up on its hind legs. And I don't know if you've ever seen llamas or alpacas. They curve their front legs in, and then they go.
I've been spat by llamas and guanacos and alpacas.
Well, this one, it reared up on its hind legs, and it uses front legs to just punch. Yeah. And so the crowd all cleared, and then the llama went down on its fours again, and then just calmly walked ahead. If the llama had not done that, nobody would have moved. So Trump is doing that, and I don't have any problems with it. You better get used to it, because we're just starting out. We've got 4 years of this, and Trump was asked by a reporter from ABC. He always asks, "Where are you from?" ABC. Oh, no wonder. She was talking about polls showing that people are very upset with what he's doing, and he said, I have the highest popularity rating of my entire presidency, and I'm one of the highest ranking. I have the highest support among all Republican presidents. So, obviously they support what I'm doing. So, what you're saying is Another founding.
And he's right. He mentioned that today.
Yeah.
Um, Today was an interesting day, by the way. Um, there were a couple of moments that I enjoyed when Trump near the beginning of his chat, because these are not speeches; they're chats. Um, he speaks of Biden, the worst president, and all that jazz, something expectable. As he said, he couldn't do anything right. Everything he touched, he turned to shit. And some people say, why do you use this word? Because for emphasis.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, there is no other way to say it. It's shit. Okay, perfect. And that came after Hoban, who was a no prisoners taking advocate for deportation, and we're going to get those criminals out and all that jazz. And at the end, he says, and if I offended anybody with what I say, well, I don't give a shit. you you want to buy him a beer at the end. Um, Trump knows that at least for now, the Democrats are in total disarray. The press does not know what the fuck to do. Oh, he had some choice words for MSLSD. He had some choice words for MSLSD. And wondering why they're still in the air. They have no audience. And they're desperate as they are. Expect MSLSD to go on the auction block pretty soon. And he's right to brag about that. If he keeps this pace, the Democrats are going to self immolate.
Well, you said for
There is
now.
no way out for them.
You said for now, but I think the situation is going to be much more permanent than we realize, given the fact that all the spigots of money have been turned off and are being turned off. So the Democrats and the press will, for the first time in their existence, have to actually earn viewers in the case of the press or readers and earn votes. So I think turning off the money spigots is going to make the situation much more permanent than
Yeah,
we.
eventually, when they run out of money, they have quite a bit stashed. Um, but it has to go on for another 8 months,
Mhm.
and I know they're never coming back when I start seeing agencies disappear,
Mhm.
because that's another thing that keeps them flush.
Well,
Uh,
Kash Patel has been nominated to run the ATF as well as the FBI. That tells you that the ATF
Good.
is not long for this world.
Merging with the FBI. Actually, I still think that the FBI has to be totally transformed. Maybe that's what Patel is going to do. So I'm not going to say anything. If he's nominated to be head of the ATF, hopefully it's either going to be completely dismantled or partially dismantled, and the remains uh, 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 stay with the FBI. But I want bigger things. I want the Department of Energy to go into oblivion. I want the Department of Education, the Department of Commerce. If we speak of cutting the money flow, so far, effectively, we've got 10% of the money flow.
Yeah, because it's been a month.
I know. That's why I say a little bit longer. And I'm not saying it as criticism, because, there's so much you can do in 4 weeks. It was 4 weeks yesterday.
Mhm.
It's. Uh, so I don't mean it as criticism. If anything, it's managing expectations. Don't expect this to be done tomorrow because it's going to take several months. The amount of money that all of these departments that we're talking about funnel into the Democrat pockets and pet projects dwarfs USAID any day and twice on Sundays. I mean, USAID was 50 billion. We're talking 3 or 4 trillion a year.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. I understand. I was laughing my ass off today with the press, up in arms and screaming bloody murder because uh, Trump told Brigadier Brown to go fish.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Brigadier Brown is the guy who was named by Trump as soon as he arrived as chief of staff. No, uh, not chief of staff. Joint.
Joint.
Oh, what a brain fart! Joint
Yeah,
chief, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, or some shit like
chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
that. And the guy was irredeemable. He sent a letter defending DEI. He said that he was ready to work with the president. If if a general, if a colonel says that he's willing to work with a general, he ought to be sent to Leavenworth.
Mm-hmm.
Insubordination and conduct unbecoming. But everybody jumped.
Mm-hmm.
Trump cannot do that. What does it tell you when the president can do this? It doesn't tell me anything, asshole, because that position is an advisor to the president.
Mm-hmm.
And if the president cannot choose his advisors and change him as often as he changes underwear if he wants, it's his prerogative.
Well, when Obama got into office, he fired everybody. When Biden got into office, he fired everybody. What's the big deal?
Mm. But it goes beyond that. It goes beyond that. He can fire them and change them at will. We're talking about his own advisors. Did anybody protest when Obama got rid of, I don't know, Corzine? True, Corzine was involved in a 2 billion fraud scheme, but nevertheless, it was his economic advisor. He could fire him, get somebody else. Since when does the president have any limit on who he chooses to advise him? So he's firing one of his advisors. It's a threat to democracy. His advisors undermining his authority and not carrying out his instructions isn't. Fuck these bastards. I've been listening to this shit for 3 days. I'm sorry. It's. Trump 1.0 says Zapato gave the bureaucracy the benefit of the doubt. Trump 2.0 understands that a hostile takeover is required, that is, a whole of government takeover. Hopefully, yes. It looks like it. It looks like it. Values. How about our own values, Thomas? What are those? You're looking for something. They're answering.
What do you mean? How? What about our own values?
Yeah, remember that we were talking about our shared values with Europe. What are those? We already established Europe per se doesn't have any values. Individual countries in Europe may do, but there is no such thing as European values.
No, they don't have shared values in Europe.
Now, in the US, we do. And my argument would be that the only reason we became a nation is our shared values, eh, which is a, how should I say this? Because we're not doing it anymore. Pretty soon, we're not going to have any shared values. It was the collective subscription to a set of ideas
Mm-hmm.
embodied in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence. And it was taught to every kid in school from the time they were 6 until they came out of high school, more than any other subject, until they all became Americans. Now we're not doing it, so less and less Americans are coming out of our school system. So I don't know how long the values are going to last, as long as one more generation, unless we start teaching them again. How long do you think before Trump revives the 1776 project?
Well, I mean, Americans, it turns out, are crowd followers, and you know, um, on top of that, we're getting so much fake news. Trump got a huge percentage of the Generation Z vote, and then we're also told that 25% of them identify as LGBTQ. Is that, do those two go hand in hand? Um, I I simply put everything in the open basket now. When I hear or read something, I just kind of go, "That's interesting," and maybe it'll turn out to be true, maybe it won't. But during this period of they're all talking about the Trump chaos. There's no chaos on part of Trump. It's all in the part of people trying to stop Trump.
They're in disarray more than chaos.
They're in a frenzy of chaos, and
Yeah.
That's their problem. I'm perfectly happy with what's going on, and it's obvious that we're going to be seeing some massive changes, much more massive than anybody anticipated, and you'll hear a lot of people screeching. Okay, when there was the press showed what the hell's what I forgot his name, Adam, Senator Adam Schultz,
Nationals.
what the hell is his name? The lollipop head.
Chicken shift. Watermelon head. Pencil neck.
Adam,
Shift.
it showed Adam Schiff at a podium talking about Kash Patel, and the press had this really, really tight angle. And the reason
Yeah.
the press, the mainstream press was showing them so close was because there was only 5 people there. There were
Yeah.
like 5 members of Congress there. That was it. No
Yeah,
press.
they were doing a protest and there was nobody around. I saw a wide angle picture of the scene. There was not one single spectator. It was the press and the 5 morons.
Right. And they were all huddled together, and because they knew that then the press would
Yeah.
zoom in and make it look like there was this massive crowd of Congress who were, in protest. And it was really funny because you just told me his name and I forgot it again. Shit.
Shift. He's forgettable.
Lollipop.
Shifty shift.
Schiff.
or chicken shift.
Okay, Adam Schiff was describing Kash Patel, and every single insult he lobbed at Kash Patel applied to Adam
To
Schiff.
him.
It was remarkable, and I'm sure he doesn't know that. I'm sure that by this time in his life, Adam Schiff can reach out and steal government money and stuff it in his pocket, while at the same time
Accusing everybody else of thievery.
telling everybody what a moral person he is. I'm sure he can do that. It turns out that there was no great cabal behind Joe Biden. It was just some brainless bureaucracy. You know, it was young dipshits who were like giving
You
him.
know, listen, there was Jake Sullivan, Blinky, Blinken, but I call him Blinky,
Mhm.
Susan Rice. You have no idea how much power she had in the Biden White House.
Well, and look what a dog's lunch she made of it.
And of course, you know, the head of USAID,
Mhm.
Samantha Powers, that
Samantha Powers was the head of USAID. Wow.
see what I mean? Yeah, no, there was a little cabal that shielded and protected this son of a bitch. And of course, bureaucracy that we know is perfectly compliant and that was pretty much allowed to do as it pleased. But Blinken, Sullivan, Rice, Samantha Powers, oh, they're definitely. If there had been a revolution in the U.S., they'd be the first ones marched to the stone jail. What a bunch of degenerates.
Well, we did have a revolution. We elected Trump, and he appointed Musk, and the rest was history.
Hmm. I can't wait until I grow old enough to have Alzheimer's and not have to remember Biden anymore.
I've already forgotten him. I never think about him. Just like Obama, I never think about Obama. In 8 years of
I do when I see some things.
in 8 years of Obama, I listened to only one speech of his, which was his claim to have killed Osama bin Laden, and that was it.
That
Never
was it. Yeah.
a single other speech of his.
I made the mistake of listening to the moment where the seas will stop rising.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah,
He actually said that shit. It was like he's in a stadium with Greek columns
yeah. I recall him.
because he was Dionysius coming down from Olympus to give us to stop the rising of the seas.
As soon as he won the election, he went on vacation for about a month.
Yeah,
Then, as soon as he came to the White House, he took a joyride on Air Force One, and he buzzed New York City. And then they lied. They said, "Oh, uh, an official photography. We didn't have any photos of Air Force One." So, and then they published this shot taken from one of the pilots escorting the 747. You know, he held up a little digital camera, or maybe even his cell phone. I don't know, but you could see the reflection of the pilot's helmet, and and it's like, "Oh, this is your official portrait." Yeah. But he was a buffoon, just an idiot, and he never knew it.
hey, Maybe. No, he never knew it, because if he knew how stupid he was, he would have jumped out of a window or something. Um, I don't know. I'll be glad when I really don't remember any of these characters. Right now, I'm still too upset. Uh, I shouldn't have talked about Palestina. It gives me stomach acidity. Um,
Their problem is going to be solved. Their hash will be settled
yes,
fairly soon.
please.
So
Uh, ha, the Zapata says the speech writer for Powers. Samantha Powers had a speechwriter. For what?
don't ask me.
Oh! Oh, what a race of imbeciles they are. She was interviewed by 60 Minutes and another pile of idiots. 60 Minutes portraying herself as a newly unemployed USAID employee.
Aw,
Yeah, cry me a fucking river. Eh, I hope we have something like 300,000 more. Maybe we'll get there.
it's going to happen.
Eh, and there are some things, though, that we need to be patient. For instance, Deb says here, uh, McMahon is supposed to, Linda McMahon, she refers to, is supposed to work herself out of a job. Needs to dismantle the Department of Education and send it to the states. Yeah, well, that was the job for Betsy DeVos 80 years ago. But you see, the Department of Education was created by an act of Congress that separated it from the Department of Health and Human Services. It used to be the Secretary of Education under the Department of Health and Human Services, and Congress separated the two and created the new Department of Education at the behest of a peanut farmer. It can only be dissolved by an act of Congress. If Congress authorizes a budget for the Department of Education, the executive must use it in the Department of Education. You can't just pretend it's gone and do nothing. And then, of course, after the next election, it's still there, and the next guy may have a different idea. We need Congress. The reason that Betsy DeVos could not do the job that she was supposed to do is in 2 years we lost the majority in the House and we got royally, thoroughly, sacramentally fucked. And a lot of idiots were happy because the rhinos were gone. I hope we get a larger Republican majority in 26 because we're going to need it. What would you think, Thomas, if somebody came up with we need to get rid of the rhinos again?
Well, we had that argument back in the day, and it was a dumb argument. But I don't know. There's some people that want to go down. You know, as what did Reagan say? They want to go over the cliff while waving the American flag.
Yes. Well, or they want to take America down the hill
Mm-hmm.
with or without the flag. Bannon. How can anybody be? He's not only a provocateur and essentially an enemy of conservatism. He's a Bergoglio man. That says everything you need to know.
Well, Bergoglio's on his last legs, so
I pray he is. May he soon be sitting at the right of God, enjoying the fruits of his vicar for 13 years and leave us the fuck alone. Is that okay? I mean, can I do that? It's not really wishing him dead. I just wish him to go to heaven with his creator. Except that his creator may not be God according to some people. Now, but only is one of his minions. He did something very stupid in CPAC. Did you know that?
yeah, I heard about it.
Okay. And by the way, totally uncalled for, totally stupid, totally unnecessary. He just did it because he wanted the publicity that he got. But right after him, the guy who was in CPAC that was going to speak in CPAC was Bardella. Bardella is the prime minister of France and the number two in the party led by Marine Le Pen. And he was supposed to speak right after Bannon.
Mm-hmm.
And Bannon took his shenanigan of a Hitlerian salute. And Bardella, who's, by the way, obviously not too fucking brilliant because he could have handled this, decided that he couldn't follow him on stage, probably fearful of the press attacks of him showing up on a stage with a guy doing the smell my armpit salute. So Bardella didn't participate and he left.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he did CPAC a favor. He also gave ammunition to the press around Europe that began attacking all of the European candidates that have been generally supportive of or supported by CPAC personalities.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is Alice Weigel, who's running in German elections today, because it's already like 3 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Today, Alice Weigel is a candidate. She may suffer because of the press that portrays CPAC as a bunch of Nazis with pictures of Bannon obliging.
Yeah, but
So
he doesn't care.
Hmm?
He doesn't care.
I was gonna say, is it that he doesn't give a shit, or
Yeah.
perhaps he does it on purpose?
No, I mean he's not. He's not trying to destroy the Republican Party. He doesn't care. I mean, he's not. If you've ever heard him speak and analyze something, he's not really breaking any world records in his analyses of things. So he doesn't care. It's he's not aware of it. He wasn't aware of what was going to happen. He's not thinking about the European press and the elections and all of that.
Yeah. Oh well. I hope he has a bout of diarrhea or something. Uh, on the other hand, like I said, Alice Weidel is running today.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like she may go over 20%, which doesn't sound like much, but it is ground shaking.
Mm-hmm.
And she may end up leading the second party in Germany. And the CDU candidate, Friedrich mm, Metzer, or Menzer,
Mm-hmm.
uh, is the gayest son of a bitch. And I don't mean it in a sexual, but at an intellectual level. You know, a guy who cries during the speeches talking about the opposition
Mm-hmm.
cries.
Yeah, yeah.
It is like an uber moron. And he's probably going to be the most voted candidate, but not have a majority. And here comes the question.
Mm-hmm.
Will the Christian Democrat, the traditional German right, form government with Alice Weidel of the Alternative for Deutschland? Or will he take a royal shit on the Libertarian Weidel and form a government with the Social Democrats?
Probably the latter.
Yeah, that's what I'm betting on, asshole. It's the most probable thing because the CDU, the Christian Democrats, are also Social Democrats,
Well, he promised.
pretending to be right.
He promised to keep the viper of the AFP AFD away. So,
Yeah,
referring to the party as a viper, then I don't see him forming a government with them.
no, and I don't see the socialists losing the opportunity of uh, staying latched on the state teat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Speaking of things, a little while ago we spoke of nationalism, the diverse meaning of nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
You know what happens if you describe yourself as a nationalist in a podcast like this one in Austria?
Uh, Nothing good, I'm sure.
You get arrested.
Ah,
That's the liberal values that we share with Europe.
yeah.
Fuck 'em all. Um, Maritime Blues. The Catholic Church should practice the DEI they want others to do. The Catholic Church wants you to practice DEI, not practice DEI. Think about practicing DEI. There is a priest for everything in this planet. That's one of the things with the Catholic Church, and that's why I don't attack the Catholic Church in general. I always make specific references to say Bergoglio because he's a son of a bitch and I know it, uh, or specific priests, or meddlesome priests, or Jesuits because those, yes, definitely are sons of bitches to the last man. But not the Catholic Church because the Catholic Church is incredibly varied and it's not the same thing in one place or another. And I think I once told you the story, Thomas,
Mm-hmm.
of my friend, the Bishop of Campana, that I was making jokes about priests buggering children because everybody was making jokes about altar boys at one time, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And he looks at me and says, don't exaggerate. Uh, One bugger priest is not the church.
Mm-hmm.
And he was right.
Yep.
And he was right. And the generalization implied an enormous amount of injustices. So I self corrected. And now, when I make a comment of that style, I try to be as precise as possible. So, the Catholic Church, for instance, the Pope promotes, incentivizes illegal migration.
Mm-hmm.
He actually helps it, makes it happen with our money. You
Mm-hmm.
know? But Cardinal Sarah from West Africa has the exact opposite position. And he calls the tempting of Africans to migrate to Europe a genocide.
Mm-hmm.
And he does it to call attention on the subject that by tempting the best and the brightest, those with any initiative, those who are willing to jump on a boat and go to an unknown land to start a life, is making these African countries, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, um, Burkina Faso, lose some of their best population and condemn the next generation to equal or worse misery than they enjoy today.
Correct.
He has a point.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I despise the Pope's position, I respect and share the position of Cardinal Sarah. Aren't both at church?
Yep.
So, it's we need to be more precise. We need to be more precise. Zapato says also, I recall in the late 70s that states were ranked based on dollars spent per student, assuming the highest performing spent the most in the fullness of time. This proved to be a fallacy, yes, indeed, and it still is, as demonstrated by broken and expensive schools in blue states and cities. Let me put it this way: we spent 4 times as much per student than most European countries. And that doesn't mean shit, does it?
No.
And now, where do we spend the money? Oh, God. We overpay teachers. We literally overpay teachers. Everybody's always crying, teachers so sacrificed. They work 9 months out of the year, collect a full salary, in many districts, obscene amounts. And then, of course, we have to pay substitutes, and then the substitutes of the substitutes, because nobody ever gets fired. That's where and in buildings. I can't believe it, Thomas, in buildings.
Yeah.
In Europe, kids go to school in buildings that are 200 years old.
Oh yeah.
In America, if the building is 30 years old, we have to demolish it and spend 200 billion building another one. And I still don't know why.
Well, it's that river of money.
Well, yeah, you see, I keep forgetting that skimming off the cleaning contract for the existing building doesn't allow you to take home as much money as skimming off of a 250 billion construction project. The
Yeah. I mean.
corruption here is,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, you mean,
No. 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 I. The whole thing is that the way things are going, the things that Musk has discovered, it's been going on for decades now, and people take this as normality, and you know all of Europe is basically like that. As corrupt as we are, the Europeans are
oh, even more.
even more.
even more. In Spain, 40% of the economy is black market. Everybody's corrupt at this point.
Yeah.
In South America, the whole thing is a black market,
Yep.
being covered by narco Marxists. I mean, that may end. That may end. You know that we have been mapping the positions of the cartels.
Oh yeah. Yep. And
And
we're
we,
not
yeah,
doing it for fun.
no, and we are locating with precision the coordinates of fentanyl labs, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what happens before they have a chance to move them?
No, what?
Oh, things are going to start flying up.
Mm-hmm.
Things are going to start flying up. There's going to be, some drones, some special forces. The Mexicans are all up in arms. The other day there was all kinds of talk about the Mexican Senate authorizing the entry of American troops into Mexico. That was mostly bullshit. The Mexican Senate authorized 10, 10 American soldiers to go in and train uh, Marine,
Mm-hmm.
the Marines over there, Infantería de Marina.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not the same thing.
No.
But I don't think we need Mexico's permission now, do we?
No. I mean, the Mexican government is scooping off its own handfuls of money from the cartels at our, you know, at a massive cost to us. So yeah, we're not going to ask for permission. We're just going to go in and do what needs to be done.
Yep. And that now that's another one that Holman said today. That and he put it in a way that I was rolling on the floor. That now that the cartels are terrorist organizations, that means that everybody who sells drugs in New York is acting on behalf of a terrorist organization.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of room in Gitmo for these people.
Oh yeah.
But coming from Holman, it's not the same thing as you and I
No.
speedballing it.
Yep.
But you know that they're conditioning 30,000 capacity for 30,000 in Gitmo.
Very nice.
Mhm. And I have the feeling there's going to be a lot of cartel terrorists um, going to Cuba on Uncle Sam's dime.
Definitely.
Mhm. Uh,
Well, I think we've put in
uh,
our almost 2 hours.
I think we have we put a little more than 2 hours,
Yeah.
and because of the lateness and the drive and all the jazz, I'm beginning to run out of steam today.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay, so let's call it a day before we both old farts drop asleep on the mic or something. Let me just remind everybody. I know, sorry, it's a little bit shorter today, but like I said, it's been a very long day for this, and we appreciate your support. And if you want to do that, you can always come to Odyssey. It's very simple. If you're watching us in YouTube or in Twitter, in the description there is a link. All you have to do is click on that link, and you're coming to our Odyssey Quadrum TV. And here you can click on support, join, or uh, leave a tip with a message or in the chat while we're live, but then it becomes a message board, and you can still do the same thing. Uh, you can always go to uh, quadverum.com/support us, and that will help maintain this channel and uh, Quadverum Forum or socialquadverum.com. And if you're in Twitter, you can come to the Brevilai and subscribe. All of the proceeds go to maintain the forum and this channel. And if you join as a channel member, you'll have access to additional material for members only. In Twitter, I cannot do videos for subscribers only. So we have other material when we can, but it is a means of contributing to this channel and uh, Code as well. So if you can do it, we'd very much appreciate it. And with that, I'm done with my begging for money. And Thomas,
Yes, sir.
do you have a last word for us today?
Jobbery.
Jabbery, as in jabber,
Jobbery.
ERY.
Yep.
Yeah, it's what you do when you jabber, I think. Or maybe I need to go to the dictionary this time. We'll see. Uh, Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody who participated in spite of the lateness. And uh, I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope that those who join us tomorrow will as well. And with that, thank you so much, folks. Good night.